I feel that it's important to not do more than one person's job at a time. As someone who is applying for a role or as someone who is reaching out from one career to another, the three most important things that we need to keep in mind is to research the field as much as possible. And once we've researched the field, align ourselves with that field to the extent possible. Alignment can be making edits to your LinkedIn, making edits to your resume, anything that you can do with the information that you already have. Not specifically spending time on going out and learning something new or doing a course or anything like that. Starting with the basic material that you already have, recognizing your own strengths and aligning it with any common points and finding those tiny regions of overlap between where you are and where you'd like to go, and spelling out those regions of overlap either on your LinkedIn or on your resume or even in a diary to begin with, so that you can begin to become stronger in that sense also helps. That's the second step, alignment. And the third is to connect, which is to reach out to people who already have the job title that you have, that you want in the future, and schedule conversations with them and ask simple questions such as, how did you get into this field? What was it like for you? Because it's important to recognize that everyone at some point has made a breakthrough. If you want to get into clinical research, no one was born with those skills. There was a point when they didn't have those skills and then they got those skills. And you are at that point right now where you don't have those skills and you want to get those skills. So when you speak with people and ask them about how that transition went, it gives you an opportunity to see what regions of overlap is shared between your life and their life. And it really gives you a lot of perspective on what steps you need to be taking next in order to take small baby steps closer to where you'd like to be. And coming back to the point of not doing more than one job, our job is essentially to research, align, and connect. But we also do a fourth thing, which is we evaluate ourselves at the end. You know, we put in the effort and we also make an assumption as to whether or not the effort might be successful or not. And that assumption is kind of a seed which sits in the mind and grows into doubt. And doubt then grows into self-doubt. And self-doubt is one of the root causes of imposter syndrome. So
Mm-hmm.
it's important to think about efforts and leave success out of it for now. Just focus on the efforts. So that's an important starting point for anyone in this journey. If you're feeling it, if you're really feeling the effects of, I don't have the skill, or I don't have this, or I don't have that, think about doing better research, making a much stronger effort to align, and making a much stronger effort to connect. What happens next is really not up to you, and it's not under our control either.
Mm. That's so in alignment with the way that we coach people at Prospology. I think one of the things I help with the most is to figure out what your story is. Where have you come from? Where are you now? How are those two connected? And even in the individual knowing that that story is true and practicing telling that story and having that continuity across their social media, their resume, the way they present themselves, that is a crucial part of the transition. One of the things that I do that was recommended to me by one of my coaches that I found really helpful for overcoming imposter syndrome is to keep a record of things that people have told me, evidence of me growing into the field of success, even on a very, very small level. Like if I have a client that gives me good feedback about some of my work, then I write that down. I write down what they said and who they were. And then I can end up with a whole document of evidence that I am doing really well, that I do know what I'm doing. And that really helps me stay focused and keep moving forwards.
I think it's very interesting what you mentioned about recording and writing down those moments and any kinds of recommendations or accolades that you might have received from people, because they really help. It helps to reflect on those moments and use it as fuel in order to drive the process forward. And one of the interesting things that I have recommended to people, specifically those coming in from a background in research, is that scientists are really good at maintaining a lab notebook where every little detail gets recorded. But as far as the job search is concerned, and as far as resilience and overcoming imposter syndrome as part of that job search is concerned, no one writes anything down. So I bring out this point and say, you used to write down every little thing, every little detail in your lab notebook when you were in the lab. But now, when it comes to transitioning outside the lab and moving into a different career, you haven't written down anything. So the first step is often to begin a notebook, much like a lab notebook, but this is a notebook for the experiment of life, where I encourage people to write down things which they consider to be strengths. Think about strengths, strengths which your mentors have pointed out to you, strengths which your family members have pointed out to you, your friends, your colleagues, anything that you might have written down about yourself in your resume, on your LinkedIn, on social media, as you mentioned, anything which you perceive as a strength, write that down and use it as fuel to drive the process forward, because it's extremely important to maintain that notebook, exactly like a lab notebook.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's very similar to one of the exercises that I do with people at Prospology, especially when conducting informational interviews, because there are certain types of questions that you're asking over and over again. There are certain categories of information that you're trying to understand and collate. And so what I encourage people to do is to make a table where they're actually breaking it down into different sections with different people, and they can write down any notable connections or resources or links or books or anything that's recommended to them. And just at the end of having conducted all of these sessions, you can actually start to analyze it and understand and interpret, what does this mean? What decisions am I going to make as a result of this? How am I going to pivot the journey that I'm on in my career? Because what I found through going through those experiences is that you evolve as you're going through, and you start to see, oh, maybe this isn't such a good idea, but maybe this is a better fit for me. And you start to build confidence in certain areas as well, and realize, oh, I do have the skills I need, or I do have the experience I need. And so yeah, I think definitely writing everything down, documenting everything, but doing it in a structured way so that you can easily look back at it objectively and see what's been going on is really, really helpful.
Absolutely. One of the very interesting keywords that you mentioned there is structure. And structure and discipline are connected. One of the interesting things about imposter syndrome is that nearly everyone understands that imposter syndrome is something which is born in the mind. But people have this misconception that the solution to imposter syndrome also has to be born in the mind. And this is not necessarily true, because it is our actions. It is our actions, disciplined and structured actions, which really help in overcoming imposter syndrome. And although there is no one size fits all remedy, each person has to take on a slightly different path. For some, it's volunteering. For some, it's putting their name out there, writing an article, writing a blog. For some, it's publishing something. For others, it's just having more informational interviews with people in the field. For others, it's taking a course or a certification or a license, which is kind of empowering to them, even though it may not be 100% necessary. So each person has a different path. But I'd like to take this opportunity to dissolve the misconception that although imposter syndrome is born in the mind, the solution to it may not be born in the mind. You have to do something in the physical world. You have to put yourself and immerse yourself in activities. You might have to try one or two different activities, but you need to really make it an immersive experience, just like a workout almost, which has to be structured and disciplined in order to use the body to train the mind to overcome imposter syndrome.
Yeah, I would say that was probably my biggest takeaway from when we had the roundtable discussion, that if you're aware you have imposter syndrome around a particular thing, then even though your instinct tells you to run away from that thing because you're not good enough, or it's overwhelming, or you need to wait till you feel ready to do that thing, the opposite is actually true. If you take steps to do it, to show that you can do it to yourself and to others, then that's how you grow confidence, because you're practicing and you're seeing that maybe it's not as bad as you thought it was, maybe it isn't as challenging as you had anticipated. And honestly, if there are lacking in skills or information, then that's how you're going to replenish that. That's how you're going to top things up and and improve your abilities. I think that was a new way of looking at it that I hadn't thought of before. And I've always been one of those people that does take action even when I'm afraid of something. I recognize the fear and I think, well, I don't want fear to stop me from doing something. So I push through the fear. But I've never really consciously recognized that that was me trying to overcome imposter syndrome. It was just, well, I don't want to be controlled by the fear. But knowing that there's actually a strategy behind that, that it actually is meaningful. And clearly, I always say, if something is bothering you, it obviously means something to you. If you want to transition into medical writing or improve your medical writing career, then the fact that it's making you nervous and feel like you're not good enough means that it's important to you, and that means that it's worth putting in that extra effort and being dedicated and showing up for yourself every day, as difficult as it may feel.